Hey neighbors, the handyman here with Initiative Coffee Company, the Bill Allan here with Bill Allan World. We missed you last week. It broke our hearts. But it's time to rise and roll. Roll like a pro.
All right, Brian, it's been a minute. We've been busy.
Approximately 2 weeks.
Yes. I was with the students in Las Vegas for the National Association of Broadcasters Conference.
It's exciting.
I will say to all of our nerdy friends that the students played quite a bit of Dungeon Mayhem in the occasional downtime. That's become kind of a thing. So, but that was a great trip.
And this is a good event because that's where you touch base with Blackmagic, where you guys get all your cameras from. Because they're very
generous
and provide you equipment. So.
And I actually got to do a presentation at their booth on their main stage, which was pretty cool, talking about how we've integrated Blackmagic design into our program here at the high school. So that was pretty cool. We missed our friend Satine. She was down there, but she came in the day that we left. So when we were headed to the airport, she was at Blackmagic Design. But that's, we see her pretty regularly. Right. So it was still kind of cool.
Right.
Brian, we have a number of interesting things. So the first thing is a Kickstarter that I'm going to paste this into the chat. So if you're tuning in live on Twitch, I just pasted a link. This first one is a Kickstarter for fantasy pins, Brian. So this is by the Armoury.
Sure.
And they make fantasy adventure pins.
Okay.
So, we watched the video a little bit before the show started. And I think what's funny is that, the idea is to kind of pick out class pins, right? So these are accessories.
Sure.
Which is cool. If you're into that kind of thing, people like to... Elise
loves pins.
Yes.
She's got walls filled with pins.
Right. And I remember from the early days of the Bard's Tale, you had the alignment pins. Yeah. So these are like class pins, right?
Sure.
So right now they're at like a little more than half of their goal. They have a $7,200 goal. They have 136 backers, and they have 23 days to go. So, Brian...
They posted on Twitter, right?
Yeah, so they posted on Twitter and basically said, hey, if there's anything holding you back from backing this, what would it be? Be honest.
Sure.
So, I mean...
I gotta be honest, I don't feel like they're in danger of not funding at this point.
Yeah, it looks like they're well on their way.
They got 23 days left, and they're well over half, so it's interesting to see them kind of reach out
to the community
without having a real maybe they're concerned, but I don't know that that's warranted,
So they have a number of interesting pledge levels, Brian. So they have an early offer kind of situation, the Kickstarter offer, where you get one adventure pin for £6, about $8. And then they have another one where you get 2 adventure pins. So for $14. So I'm like, at that price point, I would back it.
Yeah.
I don't think, sometimes when we talk about Kickstarters, the reason why they don't fund is because of a lack of price points that are accessible. Right?
Yeah.
So, and that can be a problem for some people. Some of the more deluxe things that are just kind of pricing people out.
These price points aren't terrible, though.
No, and they even, it continues. So for if you want 3 pins for 22, so there's a lot of these kind of 5 pins for 31. So you get 4 pins plus a free random pin. If you wanted,
and they're all based off class,
right? And if you wanted the exclusive banner bundle, that's again limited to Kickstarter only. 5 adventure pins. You get an exclusive pennant banner, the Armoury sticker set. And that's for like $50. That's like the whole shebang.
Honestly, the more that Elise looks at these pins, $8 is not an unreasonable price for these pins.
No.
I see them go for $10.
I would say if you were at a convention and there was a vendor selling these, you'd probably pay $10.
$10 a piece.
Yeah. Now they're expanding it beyond that with, at higher price points, you get the limited Dungeon Master full bundle. So you get, all 17 unlocked pins, exclusive double-sided pennant banner, sticker set, and the Chenille Lorne on a patch. That's pretty extensive.
I don't know what a Chenille Lorne is.
Yeah, I don't either. There's a bunch of videos. There are a lot of pictures. Oh. No, I don't know. Maybe that's it.
I don't know.
So they have, all these different classes, so you can see what the pins look like, the designs, and it's pretty robust. They have a lot of stuff. And then these spinning
They're
pins.
spinning pins?
So you can actually, it's like rolling almost. I'm not really sure how that would work. Backing cards.
Cool.
To keep your pins nice and roll your fate. Both unlock at 6,000 pounds. So I think a lot of their unlock goals just comes down to getting more stuff out there.
Yeah.
There's the pennant. That's pretty cool. The Armoury has arrived. Chenille patches. Okay. So that's what those are. So you can sew them on. Stickers.
Sticker set, yeah. This is cool stuff.
Yeah. So in summary, I think this is a great option to back. I think that, we have, we've looked at stuff before where the strategy is why people weren't backing it. Maybe there wasn't enough explanation about the product or enough kind of cross promotion, but this really seems like they're doing a good job promoting it here. So that's just one to check out. And again, if you're tuning in live on Twitch, I posted the link in the chat, and if you're watching this later on YouTube, it will be posted in the description below. All right, Brian.
So from a Kickstarter that thinks it's struggling to one that certainly isn't.
Yes. So you pointed out that the Critical Role Kickstarter, which has set records.
I believe so.
I mean, so they had a goal of $750,000, and they're at $9.7 million.
Almost 9.8. Here's the thing. I don't expect that they need our assistance at all for this Kickstarter, but we would be remiss if we didn't touch on how obscene, how crazy this Kickstarter has gone off.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that's most surprising to me is the shock in the community that it was successful.
Right.
Everything these folks touch turns to gold. I don't know why there was any expectation that it wouldn't have made close to $10 million.
Right. And it seems like with 73,000 backers, that even the most broke fan who just wanted to support this because they're like, I want to see a cartoon of my favorite D&D show. Right. Now, what I thought was interesting though is that the pledge levels, and the rewards, for $20 you get a whole bunch of free swag, right? Songs and free downloads. Yeah. So, and then it goes up to 50. Then 100, then 200,
all the way up to $20,000.
I'm scrolling down and it doesn't stop. I mean, it's crazy, right?
I think
you could buy yourself
20K.
20K demigod. You were invited to a special lunch with the cast of Critical Role in the fall of 2020 on us, of course. That isn't all that's in store for our demigods. We'll also upgrade The Legend of Vox Machina associate producer credit with that sweet executive producer title. So
is that the top tier, or is there one beyond?
That's the 20. Let me see. Oh, I was wrong. 25.
Keep going.
Deity, executive producer credit, studio tours. Yeah, all of the other swag thrown in. 25.
So the interesting
and there are 5 backers there.
Right. The interesting thing to me was I think that was the first tier to fill.
Right, so
people
the wealthy
were dropping $25,000 before they were dropping 10.
Yeah, and I have to think, Brian, that when they launched this, that they knew
they had some people.
They had those people who would bankroll a good.
They might have even known who the people were. Right. To be honest,
sure. But it definitely. I mean, when you talk about an effective use of cross promotion and community. So, you know, they build the most famous D&D streaming game. And then, of course, people want, you know, more of that cool stuff, right? And I remember, I don't know how many seasons ago, a couple of years ago, when they launched, like, the new opening sequence, and it was, like, live action, but there was, like, a ton of cool effects in there with, like, spell casting, and I was like, dude, if every game was like that, it'd be like a regular TV show. And now we're talking about, you know, an animated special that really, at that price point, they could go all in. Yeah, like they could do more than
$9 million it's a full season.
Sure,
I don't know.
Right. I mean, depends on what they're doing, but yeah, absolutely. So that is just something that, you know, again, I posted the link down below.
So when we were at GaryCon, this was 5 days old.
Right.
And they were already at $4 million.
Yeah. So it's been 6 weeks, right, since that since GaryCon. So that, you know, they've doubled.
Yeah.
That's pretty epic. All right, the last Kickstarter is one that I found because I like to keep it local sometimes. For those of you who know that we're in Illinois, I just posted the link below, and that's called "I Was a Teenage Creature." So, Brian, this is a company based out of Aurora, Illinois.
Oh, cool.
In our area, they have a goal of $10,000. They're at $1,500 so far, but they have 27 days to go. So I thought this would be one of those small things that maybe we could throw a boost to.
Sure.
The reason why I like it is because it's kind of an interesting spin on some of the pop culture games. So you're more familiar with Monster of the Week, right?
Yeah, not super familiar.
More than me, though.
More than you.
What's the concept of that?
So the concept is it's like, essentially, you think of like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer show.
Yeah.
Where like...
And you're playing the Slayers, basically, right?
Yeah,
the good guys.
Like the good guys. And that ranges all the way from like Buffy, who's like the chosen one, to like Xander, who's the mundane, like kind of loser character who all of his abilities revolve around like being lucky, you know. And the idea is like there's a new like monster attacking the village or the city I think it's intended to be every time you sit down to the table, like it's a new like monster, but the way I've seen it and the way that we've been like kind of play testing it for the channel is as like arcs, so like 4 or 5 episode arcs.
Okay. And they reference that. So with I Was a Teenage Creature, they talk about how there's the references with things like Buffy, Teen Wolf, even the Dresden Files. And, they ask this question in the opening paragraph. I'm just going to read it. So what keeps fans of this genre coming back for every episode? Is it the monster of the week or the angst and drama of the main characters' lives? So this focuses on the angst and drama.
Sure.
And they incorporate the emotions into the mechanics, which is what I triggered me as like being kind of interested. So it doesn't matter how strong the werewolf is or how fast the vampire is or how beautiful the fae is. What matters is how each of these characters feels, why they're doing something, not just how capable they are of doing it.
Sure.
So out of love, rage, fear, pride, all these elements are part of the game. The core game book is the complete role-playing game, all in one, 350-page book, maybe even 400 if sufficient stretch goals are reached. This epic tome of urban fantasy will contain everything needed to tell gripping and exciting young adult paranormal drama stories with in-depth characters that have built-in emotional backgrounds and motivations. Now, the one thing I'll say is that in reading this, I think it's self-limiting to make it young adult. Because I
don't think so. I don't think so at all. It's like there's a limiter there, but I think people. I was watching Random Tuesday's stream yesterday, and she was talking about it, and like, it seemed pretty clear when she said it that like she's not interested in a superhero, and it's a little bit different, but like, she said she's not interested in a superhero game unless it's like superhero teenagers, because that's the interesting part of the game. Like the coming to age component is the interesting part of the game.
So okay, so that I can see that, but could you not also see like the show Supernatural? Like they're not teenagers. I mean, they might have like maybe when they they're young, but
That's fair.
I guess like I'm kind of thinking like couldn't these same struggles and emotional ties into the story arc function for a variety of characters? Or could you have a party where like in a lot of these shows they're the main cast or the main party is like younger, but there's like the older wise butler
Sure.
or like the librarian guy,
Right.
Or Dr. Franklinson at the university. So like maybe there's an opportunity to kind of mix and match some of that, but
So I think the draw of the teenage setting is the like nostalgia of high school, right? Like I think there's always like that pull back, like it provides an obvious setting, it provides an obvious like conceit in terms of like these are the conflicts these characters are going to come in contact with. That's why like Monster Prom was one of the biggest games last year on Steam.
Right.
Was like it was this idea of like we're paranormal monsters trying to find a prom date, right? Like, and so I think there's a big market for that. Is it limiting because it doesn't like include like college age monsters? Maybe. But I think having that built-in conceit is probably to its advantage.
Yeah, and I think they integrate a lot of that into the system as well because so it's a D10 system based on some stats and people can read about that, but they also use angst points, which represent both the fact that adolescence is difficult and that teens use their angst to drive themselves. They can be used to add dice to a roll or add a single success after a roll or as narrative currency to influence the plot. So, I mean, I guess you're right in a sense that it's not so much a limiter, but really a key component.
Yeah.
So then they list the different types, creature types. There's casters, incubus, succubus, fae, ghosts, humans, hunters, kitsune, Japanese fox spirits, psychics, vampires, werewolves. So, and I guess more with additional unlocks. So now we get to the price point. So you can get this PDF version for pretty cheap. The physical book comes in at the $45 pledge.
For a whole game system?
For a whole game system. Potentially 300, 350 pages.
Maybe 400 if they hit their stretch goals, yeah.
I mean, that's
not
pretty
bad.
fair, right?
Yeah.
We've talked before about prices for physical books.
MSRP on a player's handbook is $50,
So if you are down with kind of supporting new games, and if you like the idea of trying something new that employs some interesting mechanics that kind of reflect the setting and the narrative, check this out. I Was a Teenage Creature. And again, the link is posted in the chat, so dig it. And if you're watching this later on YouTube, it's posted in the description below.
Yeah.
All right, we are moving on to Tabletopics. Brian.
Yes.
Last year, Wizards of the Coast hosted Stream of Many Eyes.
It's true.
And it was pretty like pro from a production standpoint. Like they created a whole like hood and like vendor.
Like a whole water deep area with a yawning portal and
that was pretty epic. So coming up is D&D Live 2019, The Descent.
The Descent, yeah.
So that's it looks pretty ambitious, man. I mean, I'm not sure exactly, what they're going to do production-wise, but
I know that they've blown it up, right? So last year it was mostly industry and
so this
programming, but this year they're blowing it up into basically a full-fledged convention.
Right. It's like a 3-day thing. It's not cheap.
It's not. I know that they're running AL a lot.
But the idea
500 for Latia.
So I think it's 300 is the lowest version that you can get in for the badge. But I think if you want the all in, but it's basically like, mix and mingle with luminaries in the industry, right? So a limited number of 3-day badges will go on sale for $300 on April 9th. So I don't know if they're sold out or not. We'd have to find out. But you find out what's next in the D&D storyline. You play in games, you get exclusive merchandise, you watch entertainment every night. So they have like, the big celebrity games happening.
You get an advanced copy of Saltmarsh. That's cool.
Yeah. Meet your D&D heroines and heroes. Celebrate the D&D community with music. So that's kind of the big thing. May 17th through the 19th, Los Angeles.
So I'm most familiar with this because last year at Stream of Many Eyes is when they launched Rivals of Waterdeep.
Right.
So my guess is they'll do, like, the new season of that will launch here, if there is one. I haven't really heard one way or the other.
Yeah, they have...
That's interesting.
So they'll be live streaming all this stuff.
Probably all of the streams from their channel would be my guess.
The Descent.
Yeah. I don't know enough about the Saltmarsh book to.
Yeah, you were right.
recognize the
There's
reference.
Adventures League stuff.
Yeah. My guess is there'll be like primo exclusive certs for Adventures League. But yeah, I don't know. Is this a fundraiser or is this just?
I think this is
an
just.
event? It's not for like Extra Life or anything.
No, doesn't look like it. I think it's just the event, and maybe they're charging money because it's going to cost so much to produce all this.
I mean.
So a 3-day badge gives access to the public event space.
Mm-hmm.
You get a swag bag, a seat at the D&D Epic, and seating at all other main stage live games and events.
They'll probably launch an Epic there also, would be my guess.
There's badges, and then there's tickets.
That's probably per event.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So generally, for a lot of these cons, you have to pay per table. There's a table fee on top of it.
Right.
It sounds like the all-day pass gets you full access. Or
Yeah.
the all-weekend pass gets you full access.
Yeah.
But if you live in LA and just want to do like 1 or 2 tables, you could probably
Looks like
buy
you could do that.
individual tickets as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's exciting. Even if you don't go to this, like
Right.
just to be able to watch
It'll
the
be on
live
stream, I'm sure.
Yeah. So it looks like Friday, May 17th is the Descent Part 1.
Mm-hmm.
Watch the live D&D game previewing the new story featuring the descent of D&D entertainers. And then Saturday, they've got stuff all day with Part 2 at 5 p.m. And then Sunday is the last closing ceremony, Part 3. So, yeah, I mean, if you're into D&D and like literally I went through the special guest list and it's like everybody
Yeah.
like every show,
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me.
so they're, and then all the like Merles and, all those people will be there. So that's kind of epic.
Yeah.
All right. So activity in the chat. We'll just say some shout outs. Hey, K Tigress 2, how's it going? DOD Spec Ops, good to see you, brother.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean we're getting towards the next table topic area, which is other conventions. So D8 Summit, when's that coming up?
The first week in May.
Okay.
That's a fundraiser for Illinois Pads down in
Utica? Is that the one in Utica?
Yeah. That's the head like the programming organizer for that. Connor is really supportive of LionCon. He's come the last 2 years to help us out with the Epic and kind of run Fight Trends. So we'll be there as vendors of whole bean. We won't be able to sell individual cups of coffee, but we'll be there selling whole bean. Our new benefit roast for the Help Action program will be there as well for Jasper's Game Day. I think they'll be selling it though. So
Sweet. And for those who don't know, Jasper's Game Day. So that was the one started by Fenway.
yeah,
right?
so Fenway Jones started an organization. She had I don't know all of the ins and outs of it, but from my understanding, she had a rough year where a couple of her friends, unfortunately, took their own lives. So she started this 501c3 to help with awareness and trying to use tabletop gaming as a method to kind of combat suicidal mentalities and general
And
depression.
Fenway's a kid. I mean,
Yeah,
what's remarkable is
she's
that she
still in
started
high
this
school,
like as a kid. She
taking high
goes
school
to tons of
classes,
cons. She supports it. She raises money.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
partnered with a bunch of the D&D community, so it's really cool, and that's
Yeah.
awesome that you've kind of
We're
done
really
this.
excited. We're partnering with her, or we're partnering with Jake from Mini Terrain Domain to support the roast. He's doing a full week of streaming to support Jasper's Game Day. I'll actually be on his live stream on May 12th.
Sweet.
So
May 12th, mark your calendars.
yeah,
Mini Terrain Domain.
yeah,
All right, so Brian,
yes.
Origins.
Origins is in June.
Right. That's Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, Columbus, Ohio. We're going with Phil, maybe Phil's husband.
Nice.
I don't know.
Are you running
excited.
games there?
You know, we were a little bit behind the 8 ball, so I'm waiting to hear if they still need tables run. I reached out to them a week ago, and they said give them a week to figure out the schedule.
Cool.
Our hope is to run some games, enough to get a badge, hopefully. Either homebrew or reach out to, I believe, Baldwin Games is the organization that does the AL component for Origins. So
Sweet. Oh, you know what I forgot about?
what?
When we were in Las Vegas for the NAB show,
Sure.
I posted something about that, and one of the fans of D&D with high school students reached out, and he was like, "Hey, I live in Las Vegas, and be prepared to run into a fan." So I was like, "Dude, like, you should meet up with us, you know?" So it turns out that Ryan is a high school student. He ended up meeting up with us. So if you're watching, Ryan, good to see you, buddy.
Cool.
His mom, brought him out. We were having dinner at a place, so we got to meet up. We took a few pictures. So
Awesome.
yeah, it was kind of cool. It was kind of cool to meet up with fans, especially the younger ones, who are trying to grow their own communities and that kind of stuff. So, all right. So conventions. Now we're on to.
I guess the other convention was CODCon was this weekend.
CODCon.
That's COD.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of a smaller event, but it's put on by their like sci-fi anime club, I guess. That and Cold Iron Conventions, which is Mike, not Merle's, the other Mike that's involved in Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
Predominantly AL.
Yeah.
It was okay. I played at 2 tables. I guess the reason I bring up CODCon is I want to talk a little bit about table etiquette and when it's time to walk away from a table.
Good call.
Like,
Let me add that to the table topics.
yeah.
Table etiquette.
Right. So I ran into this problem at the convention yesterday where a DM put me in a situation where like I didn't have a choice in the matter. It pulled me out of the table for 3 hours. Like I didn't get to I threw like one wisdom save and failed it, and he was like, "Oh, well, you're abducted then." And I was like, "I don't know what that means."
Yeah.
And they were like, it was like, "Oh, well, you got turned into a frog. You're in a sack now." They left. You don't get any more turns until your party finds you.
Right.
And I was like, okay, that seems intense in terms of like, it would be one thing if it was like a home table with friends, but this was a table full of strangers that I paid to be at. I didn't get to play for 3.5 hours of the 4-hour session. Like,
So now here's my question: if I had paid money for that, I would have been pissed.
I was pissed. I was livid.
And
for sure.
even if and so was there any rationale for that? Like
Here's the problem with AL is a lot of DMs like to hide behind the mods and be like, well, that's what the mod says, so that's what we have to do. The problem is at that point you're just narrating a 30-page document. You're not really DMing, right?
Right.
And I guess like that's the thing I want to touch on here in terms of table etiquette is as a player, like there were times when I considered just getting up and walking away from the table and just taking my stuff and like kind of taking my ball and going home.
Yeah.
But I felt like that was rude to the other players. Like, so I avoided that.
So here's a question.
Yeah.
Is when we're talking about table etiquette,
Mm-hmm.
at what point as a player do you ask to, have a timeout and talk to the DM and say, could I talk to you just off table for a minute, and then say, look, man, I don't know, what's going on here, but like if you're just gonna put me in timeout for 3 hours, I'd rather like,
right.
I'm here to play a game. So is there any way to like move forward past this, or should I roll up a new character? Like, what's your deal?
Unfortunately, with AL, like rolling up a new character isn't an option. It was 18th level play.
Ooh.
Like, the benefit of AL is all the mods are 4 hours. So, like, at worst, you spent 4 hours watching, like, a stream of people that don't stream well necessarily. Like, like I've watched 4 hours of D&D before. So from my perspective, like, it's super rude just to, like, get up and walk away from the table. And if it was just a DM, I don't know that I would have cared. But there were other players at the table that were making, like, an earnest effort to, like, resolve the problem, right?
So was it the kind of thing where, like, the DM timed you out, but basically could have brought you in narratively? Was it a narrative decision or a mechanical decision?
Both,
like,
a bit of both.
Okay,
right?
That's I have issues with DMs,
right?
Like you said, where like this is how it says to do it. Like that closed-minded thinking is frustrating.
Yeah. So like basically he was like, "Oh, you're a frog until your party finds you," and he decided where I was in this big dungeon, and like I was stuck in this polymorph form until they found me. And I was like, "All right, well then I like jump at the ceiling and try to bash my head against it to take a point of damage and break polymorph." I was like, "Yeah, you can't reach the ceiling. I don't know." I was like, dude, I'm working here. I'm trying to do something here, like whatever. Like he could have put me anywhere else, but instead he like cut me out of 3 battles, like of 4, and then cut the 4th battle short after 2 rounds. And I was like,
that's
all right.
and I think so. It's funny that you said table etiquette, because you're talking about really 2 things. As a player, the table etiquette,
it goes both ways.
You have to make the choice. If you're put into a position, like, let's be frank, a very crappy position by a DM, how do you deal with that?
Right.
Like, as the player, do you get up and walk out? Do you ask for a sidebar? And just be really open and honest with the DM and just say, hey man, this kind of sucks. Can we like move past this so I can be in the game? Or, do you just sit there and stew on it and not be happy about it? And I think that's a lot of times what ruins the game for people.
Yeah.
And I know I've had games ruined where basically I got it's like worse than dying.
Right.
I would rather you just kill my character than like not, than just do something where I'm paralyzed,
Right. And so I think part of it is like, from a player perspective, like I tried to be positive about it, and like I think every player runs into a point in time in a session where they're like, I don't feel like I'm really doing much right now. Like the other players at the table were like, man, I've been there, I've been banished whole fights, and I was like, yeah, this is 3. Like this is like 3 of 4 out, 3.5 of the 4 hour session, like
right.
And so it was a little bit of an extreme example, but from a DM's perspective, I guess that's the other thing I want to touch on is like, how do we avoid this from a DM's perspective?
Right. So we talked about the player and how you react to those circumstances, the options. Let's talk about as a DM. So I guess specific to Adventurers League?
Or otherwise, right?
Okay, because otherwise, I mean, I think there's a clear thing with Adventurers League versus otherwise, because otherwise there's really no excuse for a DM to
be like, you're in timeout for 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
In Adventures League, there's this general conceit that you have to follow the mod, but it's not. I don't agree with it, I guess. Like, I've run plenty of Adventures League tables where I'm like, oh, this part's stupid, I'm going to cut this out. I'm gonna add more here because it'll be more interesting if this happens. Like, and that's part of DMing, right? That's the difference between DMing and like reading a module to a table of people, and like facilitating.
Right.
Like, if we can draw like an arbitrary line in the sand between those two terms, I guess. And so like as a DM, if you're running a table and it's clear that like one of the people at the table, especially like if they're a combat focused character and they're out of 3 of the 4 combats, like, all right, like,
right,
whatever,
and my thing is why. So
right.
what my question, when I think about that, I'm like, why does the DM do that? How does that advance the story and the experience? And always think about the frame of reference of your table. So how does that further your campaign, your adventure, your storyline? How does that impact things? And then what does that do interpersonally? Right.
And like interpersonally at a con game for AL, who cares? Right. Like, you're not necessarily like, I don't expect to play with this DM again. In fact, I would probably avoid it in the future.
Interesting question. Do you think that what happened was maybe somehow linked to the DM's experience? Was that DM perhaps not experienced enough to know how to juggle that situation? Or
no.
Was the DM kind of more just being rigid or even just being antagonistic?
I don't think it's an experience issue because he's been in the hobby for a long time and he's run a lot of tables. I think it's an attitude issue.
Yeah, mentality. Yeah.
And I don't think it's like, oh, I want to be vindictive. I think he didn't care about the mod. Like, it was clear that he was running it cold. He didn't prep it. He was reading through it as he went. Like, he didn't necessarily want to run it, maybe like they needed someone to run, and he was like, yeah, I guess I'll do it and do you a favor.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the lesson. Is like, if you aren't interested in running a mod, don't run the mod. Like, run mods you want to run, and if that means you don't run at cons, don't run at cons.
Let me ask you though, there's often an incentive, right, to run. So is it the kind of thing where, like somebody who goes to their job and they're not really passionate about their job and they're just doing it kind of, like in a meh sort of way, then you kind of get that experience. And maybe, the incentive to run it was something that he wanted, but not so much, because he genuinely wanted to run it. It's because he just...
So I think part of it is like, it seemed like he worked for the organizers.
Okay.
And like, they were like, oh, we're a table short. Somebody's got to do this.
Yeah.
But like, you could have just like not had the table.
Right.
So that, I mean, and in terms of like, you get perks for running mods at cons, that only goes so far because the hobby's not that large. Right, it's largely the same groups of people that are organizing, especially Adventures League, and organized play. And if you start to get a bad reputation as a DM that like people don't want to play with, you're just not going to be allowed to run.
Right, makes sense.
So like over time, you're going to lose the ability to get free badges and those kinds of things. So I guess the real lesson is like, just be excited about. Like, be where you're at, right? Like, be excited and in the moment. Do some prep work. Look at stuff ahead of time. Like,
I feel like even if he didn't have a chance to do the prep work, just having the mentality of like, all right, I'm running a table for people to enjoy a game.
Right.
Nobody wants to be, sidelined, like, for a game. I mean, the same could be said with sports. Like, you suit up to play the game.
Right.
You're attending a con and paid money to play a game. Like, so, if the mechanics or the storyline within the module say that you're, somebody's turned into a frog, figure out a way for that sucky thing to not happen,
Or like end it early, right?
Or end it early.
Like if it was one battle, I'd be like, oh, I was out of battle, shoot. Right? Like, whatever. I think the biggest frustrating thing is like he tried to be super like rules lawyery after I finally got back into the battle.
Yeah.
And I was just like, dude, like you've made a player sit out for 3.5 hours. You can't just like be cool and like just like, go with the flow here. And he was like, well, that's not how it works. And I was like, well, I have 8 or 7 feats. That is how it works. Like, I'm playing Ron the Handyman Hutchinson. He's a grappler. That's all he does. Like, I have the feats to do these things. And he was like, oh, I didn't know that. And I was like, yeah, and you didn't ask.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
I think there's a big component of that's mentality and attitude. Yeah. So as a public service announcement, the table etiquette thing is, an important thing. And remember to just, it's a simple 2-word thing. Just be cool. Like, just, try to bear in mind that...
Check in with your players.
Yeah.
Like, put yourself in a perspective where, like, is this shitty for them?
Right.
Yeah, it probably is. Like, and let's figure out a way to end this.
And
like,
it's not to say that, like, playing a game at a convention's horrible. Everybody has good and bad experiences.
I've had
doing
great
anything.
experiences. Like, I went to the next table 35 minutes later and had a great time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Like...
All right, we will be closing our show today with Monster Monday.
Monday.
So thank you all for tuning in, because now you can help us pick out...
It's true.
...a page.
We need a page number from someone.
A page from this monster manual today. Now, it shouldn't be that hard to get monster suggestions. So the first person to...
69.
69. Wow, that was fast.
Douche.
69 is, oh, wow, there's a whole bunch of
Horned
things.
Devils?
Horned Devils, Ice Devils, Imp, Lemure, Pit Fiend, or Spined Devil.
Yeah, devils.
You picked a dumb page, Dave. 157, 88. Yeah. Both of these would be better pages than Dave's page.
88. Adult Black Dragon?
Black Dragons.
I think we did Dragon.
We did Dragons, yeah. 157.
There's nothing better than a book and flipping pages through the book. Uh-oh. Except we
already did these two. I don't think we've done Gibbering Mouthers.
Let's do that.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think I've ever used one in a game.
I have, but you wouldn't know it.
Okay, so challenge rating 2. I always thought they were a lot more powerful. All right, let's look through. So they have an amoeboid form, an amorphous mass of mouths and eyes that propels itself by oozing forward, fastening several mouths to the ground and pulling its bulk behind. Though it moves slowly, it swims through water, mud, and quicksand with ease. Mouths of madness. When a gibbering mouther senses prey, its mouths begin to murmur and chatter, each with a different voice, deep or shrill, wailing or ululating, crying out in agony or ecstasy. This cacophonous gibbering overcomes the senses of any creature that hears it, causing most to flee in terror. Others are overcome with madness or stand paralyzed. Ooh, I like this.
Yeah.
And then all-consuming. Driven to devour any creature it can reach, a gibbering mouther flows over victims, transfused by its mad ranting. Okay, so armor class 9, 67 hit points.
Swim and movement speed of 10.
Mm-hmm. Aberrant ground. The ground in a 10-foot radius around the mouther is dough-like, difficult terrain. Ooh, cool. Each creature that starts its turn in that area must succeed on a DC 10 strength saving throw or have its speed reduced to 0. Gibbering. The mouther babbles incoherently while it can see any creature and isn't incapacitated. Each creature that starts its turn within 20 feet of the mouther and can hear it must make a DC 10 wisdom saving throw. So that's why it's only challenge rating 2, because it's DC 10. Like if
it was a higher challenge rating, it would just be a higher DC.
If you want, here's a DM tip. If you wanted to throw a gibbering mouther at your party and they were like scoffing at it because maybe they're like 5th or 6th level, all you have to do is raise those DCs and just call it an elder mouther.
In one of the AL con created modules, there's a gibbering mouther the size of a mountain.
Oh my god!
And so like. It's a much higher CR. So, yeah.
So the special attack is Blinding Spittle with a recharge of 5 or 6. The mouther spits a chemical glob at a point it can see within 15 feet, so it has a range attack.
Yep.
The glob explodes in a blinding flash of light on impact. Each creature within 5 feet must succeed on a DC 13 dex save. That's a little more challenging. Or be blinded. So it's hard to run away when you're blind and you're in difficult terrain. Yeah, so that could be a very challenging low level encounter, or if you buff it up, it could be a little bit higher level. Okay, Brian, I'm percolating on this idea.
What are you thinking?
I'm thinking of something deceptive in a lagoon. So like a muddy, swampy area with like a lagoon.
Almost like a bog.
Yeah, like the players have to cross through, a hot Mediterranean kind of environment. Like the glass shores. Some random island. But maybe there's an island far off in this bog that they have to get to, where there's a shaman. And the shaman has important information related to this old relic that they found, right? So they scout things out, and they're finding a little, kind of going through the bog, through the marshes to get there. And this thing emerges, but maybe first they hear the whispers. Like there's a tuft of grass here and there, and, some swamp weeds and stuff. And what do you call that green stuff that floats on top? Algae, yeah. So maybe they hear the whispers first. They're like, and they're like, what is it? And they're thinking ghosts, but then they see a little movement under the water. The algae floating on the water kind of swirls as if there was some movement. And they're proceeding towards the island, but the Gibbering Mouther comes up behind them, right? And then, surprises them right off the bat, shoots a spittle at them. They're blind. Maybe they split up. Maybe they're making saves. It starts to attack. And then what I would do is I would have a second Mouther, the mate of this Mouther, because they're asexual, so it doesn't really matter what they are. But the second Mouther would be in between the party and the island that they're trying to get to. So the first Mouther kind of pops up from behind them, draws them in, gets them startled, maybe spreads them out. The second Mouther comes up and begins kind of attacking them. Inside the amorphous blob body of one of the Mouthers is another clue. It's another part of these ancient artifacts, these relics, that this Mouther swallowed, like a whole adventurer who was trying to make it to the island to talk to the shaman about that object. And that's why it's important for the party to always kind of search, even if they take it for granted that there's nothing there. And maybe I would give them like a bonus, if someone had Arcana, like to say like, you notice like a weird blue glowing,
like protrusion,
something in the blob, and you see a skeleton, and like the hand of the skeleton's holding something that's glowing inside the viscous, sinewy, something like that. So that way, in other words, there's an incentive for them to defeat the Mouthers.
Yeah.
Now, if they just run away, that's fine. The shaman can tell them that, like, yeah, it's funny, you're not the first adventurer to come to me about this. There was an adventurer who sent word that they would be coming long before I moved to this island, and something. But that's my idea. Brian's turn for Monster Monday.
Yeah, I'm gonna reskin it. So true story. The Gibbering Mouther and the Grick were the two things I was considering as the main encounter for the pilot of the Bard's Tale. And it was just like the notion of reskinning either one of them to be like this amorphous, like blobby, gooey, mucus thing that was jettisoned off a Leviathan. And it was a tough call to figure out which one I wanted to do. I ended up going with a Grick, but I think if I'm doing this, I'm re-skinning. Maybe there's not so many teeth. Maybe there's only like an odd form that kind of swallows you, and it does like acid damage instead of piercing damage. It's more of like a gelatinous ooze, or like an ooze rather than like an aberration. But maybe not. Maybe it does have like sharp things inside it that like like cut you and pierce you and everything else. But I think like the notion of like teeth and eyes skeeves me out more than like I want to like, for lack of a better phrase, like it skeeves me out more than I want to put my players through. So like maybe it's just like one amorphous blob with some teeth instead of being a tooth and eye golem. But yeah, I think like so there's some cool things about CR2 creature stat blocks, right? Is that like between like 1/2 and probably CR3, you don't really have to worry about the specific monster. What you're looking for at that point is ideas for abilities, right? Especially if like you're making custom monsters regularly. So I think there's a lot here that give you an idea and insight into things that are going to challenge low-level parties that aren't going to be particularly cruel, right? Like difficult terrain is rough, movement speed of 0 is rough. This madness thing is pretty rough. But ultimately we're still only doing, 17 damage turn. So maybe we adjust that here and there also. But we're doing a bite attack, right? Like it's not creating new ideas. It's about like using these as resources to develop new and interesting monsters that fit the setting you're developing. So if you want to see how I did that in the past, look at the pilot of the Bard's Tale. So
well done. And I would say that that's a fantastic tip for any DMs, especially new DMs. If you're not sure, how to use a monster, don't feel like you have to use every...
Right.
So, this, for example, could attack with a bite and a blinding spittle if you made the recharge roll. Doesn't mean you have to.
Right.
Don't, remember that being a DM is kind of always adjusting to what's going on with the party. If the party's really struggling and, you're on the verge of totally killing them with this monster, don't.
Especially...
Make it challenging, but don't unnecessarily kill them.
Especially at, a CR2. Like, if a CR2 is about to wipe your party... it's probably their first time playing. Don't be that guy.
But even with veteran, I think you would agree with this. Even veterans, so a lot of times when you have veteran players at your table, they know all the monsters. Some of them, even growing up in older editions of D&D, my friends would have all the stat blocks memorized, and they would metagame. So they, even though their character wouldn't know what the hell a Gibbering Mouther was, they knew what it was. And so they knew how to defeat it, right? Well, then just reskin it, like Brian said, and give it a different name, give it a different description, and throw them off. They won't know, or change the blinding spittle instead of a flash of light. Maybe it's acid damage, or remove the gibbering component altogether and add in something else. So I think what you pointed out is an excellent tip for DMs of all experience levels, because you can take this stat block and recreate things. All right, well, that was a successful jam. I will make a note of the Gibbering Mouther. So if you have tuned in live with us today, thank you for tuning in. Please make sure that you follow Initiative Coffee Co. on Twitch, because that's where we do the live show. But also... we post this later to the Initiative Coffee Company YouTube page, and make sure you subscribe over there.
Check us out on Patreon to support programming like this in the Bard's Tale.
And we have more content coming with Rise and Roll. And then Brian's also, we're in the mid-season hiatus before the last 3 or 4 episodes of Season 3 of Bard's Tale. But we'll be resuming, now that we're done with our various cons and traveling and all that stuff, we'll be resuming that in the coming month and a half to finish out the school year. But if you have any questions or comments...
check out our merchandise.
Threadless. There's merch.
InitiativeCoffeeCompany.threadless.com.
So thanks again for tuning in, all you guys. We appreciate your support. And thanks for subscribing, and we will see you next time.
Rise and roll together.
Yep, rise and roll together.
That's true.
Yes.